welcome to the next episode of the Backstory on Marketing and AI. If you haven't already done so, please visit prorelevant.com and sign up for more episodes. I am the author of the upcoming book, The AI Marketing Machine, and you can find out more information on this at marketingmachine.prorelevant.com. So today I'm interviewing John Gargiulo of Airpost.ai. Fascinating story, especially if you're in the e-commerce space, it sounds like. But let me tell you a little bit about John, and then we'll go from there. So he is the co-founder and CEO of Airpost.ai, and he's helped multiple consumer brands boost their growth through user-generated content and ad strategies across social media channels. Wow, this is going to be fascinating. John, welcome. So good to have you.
Thank you, Guy. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what is your backstory on getting into AI and marketing?
Yeah, it's been an obsession since the early days. So I got into marketing a long time ago in the New York agency world as a creative. I went to Miami Ad School. I got to work at my dream agency, Cliff Freeman and Partners. They did Where's the Beef, Pizza Pizza, etc. And I got to work with Cliff and come up with funny ideas and show up at a set in your early 20s to see 50 people making it happen was really heady and amazing. And fast forward 20 years, that whole sort of Mad Men world of spending 500K and 50 meetings in 5 months to make three TV ads that you don't really know if they move the needle or not, is changing. AI is the catalyst for that. Most recently, I founded an agency called Ready Set, creative vertical UGC video first. That grew to about 150 people, clients like DoorDash, Hims, and others. And in between there, I was at Airbnb for a few years, leading parts of marketing there. On the AI side, since the GPT-3 days, I've been fooling around with it, really curious about it. Obviously, I was one of many people that saw that it had huge implications for the future, particularly for marketing, and started building Airpost inside of my agency a few years back. And now we've got this foundation for this skyscraper that can, ingest a link to your Amazon page or your PDP and make you 100 ads to watch and make some money with.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, you know what's interesting about your story is that transition from being a kind of a content guy and a creative guy, and now getting over into the AI and using that with the support of AI and the automation of AI. You know, one of the things that I think is going to happen as well is that creative folks, it's going to be a long time before human creativity is supplanted by AI. At least that's my opinion. Any thoughts on that?
That's my hope, but I don't share the opinion. It was over a year ago, Guy, that a friend of mine, who's a very well-known advertising creative legend, won, Cannes Grand Prix and everything. He posted five Onion headlines, and he said, "Guess which ones of these were made by AI?" And spoiler alert, they all were. But I didn't see that coming because if you go to the Onion these days, I don't know. For me, it's not as funny as it was 20 years ago. I just don't, I used to think they're just so creative and hilarious, and it seems to have faded a bit. But these five lines, like three of them were laugh out loud funny. And funny's hard to do. It's kind of the tippy top of creativity. Now, when we all go into ChatGPT and say, make me laugh, does it make me laugh? No. But, I'll give you the latest. Sam Altman posted recently, and this model's not even out yet. We think it's GPT-5. First time I've been impressed with the creativity of a model. And he posted a 3 or 4 pages of meta fiction, something I'm not that familiar with, but I kind of got the drift. Deep, dramatic, sort of sci-fi-ish, odd writing. That was a little overdoing it, but I mean, there were some insights and thoughts and turns of phrases in there that were well past the average sort of person who calls themselves creative. So I think it's scary. I wish I could tell you, oh no, these robots are never gonna, write a funny ad or do a Nike commercial, but I think they will. It just maybe it'll be 12 years instead of two, or 2 years instead of 2 months. But it's coming.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wonder though, especially where I don't know. I'm not an ex. I mean, yes, I'm an expert in how, AI is going to influence marketing, but I'm not an expert in how the AI actually puts stuff together. But it sure
No, it
seems
is.
like, when I ask it to, to respond to a prompt or something, it seems to me that it's taking something that it finds somewhere else, maybe taking bits and pieces here, bits and pieces there, and throwing them together and putting together some response. And so
You
on
just
something
described
that
how I would answer you if you asked me a question, to be fair.
well, I must be close, but I don't know. But if that's the case, and so it's not really generating something new. What it's taking old stuff or existing stuff and kind of slamming it together.
I guess
And
I'm being flip, but I mean, what is a new idea? Is it something completely out of thin air, or is it taking a bunch of old stuff that's in my brain and as I come up with an ad at Cliff Freeman, smushing something together?
yep,
You know what I mean?
yep, fair enough, absolutely. But still, when I think of some of the incredibly effective and creative commercials like the Aflac duck, could an AI have come up with an Aflac duck? That
I hear
first
you. It's like
commercial,
there's something on paper, even the Aflac Duck, and that was
how they
Kaplan
did that.
Taylor. Yeah, Linda
Yeah,
Kaplan.
yep,
Um,
Linda Kaplan Taylor. That's it.
Yep, and I knew the guys who came up with it. They freelanced at my agency once in a past life. And on paper, I bet you a lot of people at the client and the agency, even then, before it aired, said this is ridiculous. It's like a doc that just says our name. This is the cheesiest thing ever. It'll be gone in half a year, and it wasn't. And there is some juju there to like, how do you know, et cetera. But again, it's not today, guy, but it's what, how long? 5 years, you're going to blink and it'll be gone. Um, you are going to be able to say, hey, I love that Aflac duck and these other ideas. And I need something that's sort of hard to put your finger on why it's funny and it's kind of awkward or odd. I've been watching a lot of old Vine videos with my son, which are just so creative and funny and weird to me. Come up with 10 ideas like that. Oh, these two, you're onto something. It's just like talking to a creative.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
again, now it's not there, but it's really headed there, man. Like if you looked at how what those answers would look like 2 years ago versus now, and again, imagine 2 years from now, 2 years from that.
yeah, yeah. Well, even 2 months from now.
Seriously.
Yeah,
I mean, every
I
half
know.
week there's new models coming out.
No, it is just crazy. Well, we kind of got a little bit off, but so tell us a little bit about user-generated content and how you're using that and how you see that kind of revolutionizing marketing that can really drive DTC, direct-to-consumer brand growth.
Yeah. I mean, I've met with hundreds of direct consumer e-com founders that are doing, I don't know, 10 to 250K a month in spend. And they are struggling for a number of reasons. A, they are not Facebook ad experts, nor do most of them want to be. They love skincare, and she's developed this really cool packaging, and she's having an issue with her 3PL, and the inventory is at a weird level for what, like, there's so many hats to wear. And they just, back to again, first principles, they just want to spend some money on this marketing thing and make more money back, provably. Full stop. How do they do that? It's problematic. They can DIY it, which is a lot of work and time and may not work anyway. They can hire agencies, which mostly they churn through every 7 months because it doesn't move the needle that much and it's a lot of work. So what we're doing is just jumping to the end with Airpost.ai and saying, look, you need video ads for Facebook. Here's a cell. Put a link to your product. We can use AI to scrape the page, download all the photos, download all the videos, look across your Instagram and your, past ads you've run on Facebook, ingest all of your footage. We have about 400,000 pieces of footage that we've quietly built up over the last several years. Vertical UGC shot with a phone kind of stuff, the biggest in the world. And then astroturfy footage is starting to become good enough where we take that photo from their website of the woman holding the product and smiling, and we animate it for 3 seconds since she turns her head, and now that's a clip in a video ad. So, we mix all those ingredients together to make these different dishes, put them out to the dining room floor, and people can see results.
That is just incredible. When I think about how hard that would have been able to be done, before. And especially I could imagine, if you've got, I don't know, 10, 50, 100 different products that you're trying to sell, and
Yeah.
you want to have something that is really just that edge to get, that consumer over the hump. Doing something like what you're talking about can certainly be a strong differentiator.
Yeah. Hope so.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's at the core of digital marketing, of course, is how do you online, how do you grab those clicks and grab those converts and stuff like that? And AI is in the middle of that, and you're certainly accelerating it. And I would imagine that over the next, I don't know, maybe it is 2 months, over the next year or two, that is just going to be the way all of the, digital marketing is. So how do you see AI? Making even more in that transformation of the digital marketing process.
I think it's got to be good enough, and it's not today. If you're listening to this, you've probably tried an AI tool for marketing that you may have even been initially excited about, or a friend told you about. And you may have opened it, you may have started to use it for 3 minutes and still been excited about it. And then 13 minutes later, you're like, I think this is not going to work. Or God forbid, a week or three later, are you really still using it? That's because my personal opinion is if you can't get 95% the level of quality that people are with their old ways and manual ways now, it's worth zero. It's not worth 90, it's worth zero. And so with a video ad, with some analytics, with a talking strategy, with a chatbot, if it's not like I just can't tell the difference between this and manual, and that's how we do our evals. It's like literally manual ads from a brand and Airpost ads randomized, and we ask people which ones are AI. And if people can't tell, why would you do it the manual way? And so far, spoiler alert, people can't really tell, and it's getting better and better every week.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think you're right. That first ad that Coca-Cola did, which got panned, personally, I didn't think it was, I thought it was a good experiment. If you think about it as an experiment, it was a great way to kind of get your toe in the door and see what it's going to look like. And then you get obviously, everybody, and I mean, a lot of negative complaints, but nevertheless, it was something to gain some feedback. And so from that perspective, I think it worked. But now that AI is getting there and is maybe on the threshold of really taking off, that then has other impacts, and all of a sudden, the human touch in marketing is maybe going to go. Now, we talked in the teaser a little bit about one of my favorite ads, which is the Aflac ad. That first one with the duck, and they're throwing pieces of bread at at trying to figure out. He's trying to remember what the name of the company is,
Yeah.
and that human creativity at that point, I'm finding it hard to believe that AI is going to replace that. So tell me what you're thinking about when you
Yeah.
talk
I
about
think if
that.
you look backwards, it helps look forwards. So I used to share your opinion more strongly. When we started working on Airpost, when you went to make a script for a TikTok video ad, if you just asked AI, hey, I'm making a script for a TikTok video ad for this brand, make me one. It will make you one. It'll tell you what should be in the scene, what's happening, or it'll just give you a voiceover. And it was horrible. I was convinced that it's horrible because it was learning, where are actual ad scripts written down, right? People are not going off transcribing TikToks, at least they weren't in 2022. And so it sounded like just like whatever was on the internet about commercials that were fun, probably from the 1980s and 90s, that were on some blog somewhere where someone had written down all the words in the ad. That's what it sounded like. It just sounded like an ad. It sounded very corny. I was on a call with somebody 4 to 6 months ago, and I went to prove that point to them how our script writing, which uses so many microservices and ways to craft it to make it actually good and educational and informational and interesting and specific. I said, yeah, like, whereas if you just go to ChatGPT, I'll do it right now. And I pulled up ChatGPT and I said, make me a TikTok ad. So it's like a couple years later. It wasn't bad. And I even specifically said, make it colloquial and very Gen Z and how people talk there. And it did. It did like an 80% good job. I thought, oh, this is interesting. And today it's even better. What's probably happened, by the way, I don't know this, is there's a lot of rumors that these model companies have now started transcribing all of YouTube, all of TikTok, now even multimodal, watching them to understand what to use to make something like this. So they've really pulled in the corpus of like humanity, which mostly exists on the internet. Um, and things are getting more and more creative. My bet, guy, is that in 2 years max, if you just go on and say, make me a funny TikTok ad for Aflac that incorporates the duck or invents a new mascot or whatever, you'll like it. You may not love it and say this, but I mean, if I showed you 200 ads, you wouldn't love them. It's getting there.
Yeah, but fair enough. And I,
Yeah.
I, I kind of agree with what you're saying. And so that kind of means then you have then, let's say, human managers or whatever it is, executives, and
Yep.
then they're saying, "Hey, I need this, go off and do this," or maybe they have somebody that's working for them that's a prompt engineer, or somebody that is a marketing, video creative prompt engineer, and hey, we need a commercial that does this. Give me 5 concepts or something like that. But one of the things you said right at the end was is that, hey, these are pretty good, but they're not outstanding. So when I think of, like, again, I think of the Aflac duck, I see that as being outstanding.
Mhm.
And so, the question then back to you is good enough good enough? Or am I just going to get, after everybody's doing it, am I just going to get lost in the sauce again and I'm not going to be standing out in a way that I really need to be?
That is fair. Like if everyone could make an Affleck level commercial, then we got to go even higher than that. Again, I wouldn't overestimate personally. I hear that. I wouldn't overestimate the quality level of humans today. Like if you just watch nothing but ads for 3 hours, you probably think that 95% of them aren't even good enough. And I know what you're saying. You're asking about the outstanding. I guess what I'm positing is if it's a big mix even with humans, yeah, it's going to be a big mix with AI, and a lot of it's just going to be pap. But my bet personally, and I think I have a theory that the reason, and I'm a creative person, all my friends are creatives in advertising. The reason it's really hard to hear this or just to agree with it is because it seems to be so counter to what we maybe would like the world to be and maybe like our own lives and jobs. But like it is going to happen. We are going to have outstanding. And I could be wrong. As part of me that hopes I'm wrong, but I think we're going to get there.
I hate to say it, I think you might be right. I mean, yeah, I'm an analytic kind of guy, and I think creative guy today, or maybe a couple of years ago, but I think creatives are worth every penny you pay them. Because
Yep.
if you can pay somebody to get that Aflac quality commercial out, and
Yep.
then that right there it's worth it. I mean, the hockey stick that Aflac enjoyed after that commercial went on for, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 years maybe.
Yeah. Still
And
going today.
yeah, yeah, and so that's something to me, in my thinking, only a human can do. However, to your point, if I was going to watch, 10 or 50 commercials, one after the other and start to score them, I'd probably say, you're right. These, 45 of them aren't really that great, or they
Yeah.
don't have a storyline, or they're just, kind of pushing the product or something like that. And then those, I think you're right. Those, at least in the short term, you could easily replace with an AI generated commercial, and you might actually do better than what you see there.
And they could be more smart. Those AI commercials could be smarter around what has been working on digital, what has been working on these vertical TVs in our pockets. Oh, when we talk about this inside, even if it's a black box, the algorithms understand that this kind of vibe and this kind of person is working. And so they make the TV commercials based on that. I've been a creative coming up with TV commercials. No one's looking at that. Maybe the planner comes in and talks about some insights that she gleaned from something last year, but like there's not the level of efficiency. Can I speak a little bit, Guy, to what might happen to the jobs, the creative jobs, if this world
Yeah,
comes true? Because
absolutely. Because
I
that's, I
feel
think that's one of the big challenges,
it's a
that
huge
marketers
challenge.
and creatives are facing. Yeah,
It's
please.
scary. It's a scary feeling, and I can almost feel people listening to this being like, "Oh, great, it's all over." I've learned about something semi recently called Jevons. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Jevons paradox. Have you heard of this?
No.
Okay, I had neither. So I'm going to read it so because I never get it right. The summary, the Gemini Google summary, Jevons paradox, named after 19th century economist, posits that increased efficiency in resource use, i.e., ads becoming just so easy to make, can paradoxically lead to increased resource consumption rather than the expected decrease. So, for example, there were guys pulling oil out of the ground in 1930, 1920, and very inefficiently, or cotton before the cotton gin. You pick your thing, and then all of a sudden it became really easy to get way more, 100x more, right? Just like you and I are talking about, it might be really easy to get 100x more creative efficiency. Well, crap, there's going to be no one, they're going to have to fire 90% of the oil industry or the cotton farmers or the advertising creatives. But actually, the opposite happens. My favorite example of this, because there's a visual that goes with it, is there's a famous-ish photo of an insurance company in Syracuse, New York, in, I don't know, 1921 or something. And there's just lines of wooden desks, huge room. And it's mostly women with abacuses and paper, and they're calculating actuarial tables. And their business cards say computer. They're called computers.
Hmm.
People say, I work as a computer down at the insurance company, and they compute things. You know where I'm going with this. Fast forward to where somebody someday said, oh, I could just put this Microsoft computer on one desk and press a button and it'll do all of that work. Well, we're just going to have an empty floor. We're going to have to fire 90% of the company. There are more insurance workers per capita or per whatever, apples to apples, way more than insurance companies needed then. So the abundance of, oh, that data part's easy, just opens up more and more attics and roofs and buildings that I can't anyway, picture those unknown unknowns. But it happens every time when these big shifts happen. And so I think it's easy to be like, oh crap, like, but that's what I do. I'm a computer and now I'm gone. Like, there's going to be so much more opportunity for folks.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that you're right. I mean, you look back at like office automation, and I don't know, this is maybe, I don't know, 20 years ago, and office automation was going to just wipe out all of the office workers. Well, now there, like you said, there's probably 10 times more office workers
100%.
than there were than before. So
Yep.
yeah, certainly their positions are different, and what they're doing is very different, and
Or
I
in
think
some
that's
cases, like heard a podcast yesterday with some sales AI smart leaders, and they pointed out that these AI SDRs that are, sales development reps that'll go do things for your B2B, even the generation of tech before AI, all these sales tools to help you take notes in Salesforce 10 times faster and all this stuff. Actually, the efficiency of a sales rep has not gone up.
Mhm.
So, as weird as it sounds, it might be in a few years. Like one way I could see it going is, Walmart has the same number of creatives actually. And yeah, they're all using these tools, just like all the sales reps are using these tools, but there's the same number of them. They're not getting that much more efficiency. They don't want to go back to the old ways because it does save them time. But as someone sort of cynically pointed out on this podcast, what do they do with that time? Okay, now they can make 12 sales calls a day theoretically instead of six because of this efficiency. Do they? Or do they just fill it with, having going out for another coffee? So it'll be really interesting to see how much that paradox comes true.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I will admit, it's so easy to get stuck in those doom scrolling loops. Maybe that's what they're doing. Although, too, if the on the flip side, just thinking out loud, and we're definitely way off on a tangent, but if the category size volume has not changed, then all of the sales folks in that industry have gotten, let's say, more efficient, but they're still chasing the same number of deals.
Right.
Now, if one of them is more efficient than the other, then they are going to have maybe a short-term kind of an advantage. At some point, they're going to all even out again based on, some share level because the category volume hasn't changed. Now,
Yeah,
in our example of office automation and in your example of insurance and the human computers that were out there, the actual number of computations probably expanded, 10 or 100 fold. And
that's
so
right.
it's may or may not be, totally like for like in that case. Anyway, let's talk about one other thing. And so one thing that's critical for any company or any brand is growing the brand. And so how do you see AI driving and creating opportunities for brand growth? But before you get into that, what do you define as brand growth?
I was about to ask you the same question. Um, are you talking about top of the funnel, kind of just getting the word out,
Well,
or
that is
mind?
exactly where I was going because you got top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, and and when I think about brand growth, certainly selling more grows your brand emotionally. No question about that. You got more people engaged with it. They're using it more. Therefore, you got more brain cells that know what your brand is. But before they've even purchased, brand growth could be considered, well, I've got more people that are more aware, or I've got more people that have a favorable perception of the brand, or they rank the brand higher, even though they're not necessarily in market at the time or yet or never will be, but they still have a very high brand perception. To me, that's what I would define as brand growth. It's more the emotional side as opposed to the sales side, although
Mm.
they're tightly linked, but brand, in my mind, is emotion, and then sales, so to speak, is then conversion.
Yeah, I would say I got a masterclass in my years at Airbnb from our CMO and CEO on building an incredible brand. It's funny, we've been talking a lot about what are the words and emotions we want to elicit from in Airpost on our page. And I thought we had a decent thing going, but talking with an external firm and some other people, it's like, wow, yeah, this could really be meaningful. So whether it's explanatory, so if like for B2B, I know some guys at a company called Format and they were super hot because their founders were, popular from before, but no one had an idea what the heck it did. And then my friend of mine joined as head of marketing, and he said, make funnels like you make ads. And that immediately said two things. Oh, this company helps design a whole funnel, digital funnel. And oh, I make ads every week. I don't, we haven't changed our funnel in 7 months. I guess I'm doing something wrong. Airbnb, right? Belong anywhere. Talk about the emotional level. Nothing about stay closer to the city center, no, not just in the city center, go to a neighborhood outside of Tokyo or something practical. It was much deeper because everyone wants to feel that they belong and no one wants to be a tourist. So, Brian and Jonathan landed on that in the back of a cab in Asia somewhere, but two words, very powerful. So I think brand definitely still matters. I think it's definitely one of the more nuanced, heady, emotionally things that AI is not great at now. I think it will be better someday. And I think it still matters. And I think it's probably, I was going to say underrated. I will say in sort of the SaaS world that I play in, and your audience is more right consumer. It had the B word was a dirty word for a long time. Oh, what is this? B2B company wasting money on some brand agency to talk 7 months about changing their logo. Now people have realized, as one guy put it, if you and I are starting a company and we need some CRM software, Salesforce, it's probably already in your brain. If we need some inbound marketing or some lightweight CRM, or let's skip to mail, some Fisher Price email solution, MailChimp. When those things jumping to our brain are really powerful, right? And it really makes it harder for other people to get in. It's a moat. It's one of the seven powers that the consultant wrote the book that Reed Hastings loved. I love that book. It's called The Seven Powers, which is basically might as well be called the seven moats. So I think brand is very important. I think the emotion is the big piece of it. And that's something a lot of people get uncomfortable with or don't know how to do, but it's worth the investment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, in my definition, that a brand, is got to be how many brain cells or
I like the way you
synapses
put
do
that.
you own,
Yeah.
as opposed to another brand. And it certainly has to be also competitive. You got to look at it in relationship, between Dove and Olay or, Vaseline or whatever the other brands are in there. Anything else? I've got one more good question for you, but anything else on that we haven't talked about or?
No, I hate to be pitchy on these things, but just for anyone who's sitting there thinking, man, I need more video ads, and I don't really feel like churning through another agency or figuring out how to use some tool, just go to airpost.ai, put your link in, watch magic happen. If you're not happy, let me know. Just John at airpost.ai, but it's a new thing in the world. So I think it could be helpful to folks. Check it out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, no, I do have one more question for you, and definitely airpost.ai. AI, as we just talked, is changing the whole marketing landscape for all of the functions within marketing. So, what advice would you give to an up and coming new marketer?
Oh boy. I think there's two kinds of marketers. One, people who embrace AI and are constantly trying to figure out where the bleeding edge is and where the useful bleeding edge is, because that's not the same thing. What stuff is actually practical to use. For example, content stuff like SEO, optimization, writing, those tools have crossed, I think, the 90-95%. A lot of them still have humans in the loop, but there are areas that you could be using AI right now to help your business, although they're quite few, in my opinion, that are at that level. Don't be one of the people that just comes up with an excuse for why it's not going to work or point out things that are wrong with it. I sometimes think about what we're doing, but you could extrapolate this to AI generally as, it's 19, it's 18 whatever, 19 whatever, and if you want a kitchen table, you go to the local craftsman in town and he's crafting the table. He's got sandpaper, his hands are weathered, and he makes these tables. And you heard about him. You heard about another guy you could go a few doors down and makes tables. And we're walking into town with our modern clothes, being like, we have this idea for Crate and Barrel. We're just going to stamp out the same tables, try to make it look like that one and that one at a factory. And what do you think people are going to do? They're all going to scoff. And who's really going to hate it is people who make tables. And they're going to go, that's ridiculous. Well, that one that just came off the line, did you notice how that's wrong and that's wrong? And but eventually there's a place for that. And by the way, our kitchen table was made by a person, like by hand. So there'll always be craftsmen, but don't be we had five categories of personas at Airbnb. The last was called the heel dragger. You have to like, come on, grandma. I promise the Airbnb, no one's gonna watch you with cameras, they're just late to the party. Boy, as a marketer, which is a very modern creative space and profession, you do not want to be a heel dragger. So I say just take the plunge, close your eyes, learn, ask ChatGPT anything. that you want to know, and you will be ahead of 90% of marketers.
I don't know about you, but I aspire to be a heel dragger.
That's funny. I have a friend who's always he loves that was a thing because he's like he's definitely that with tech.
Yeah, well, wonderful. John, thank you so much. That's a great answer. I really appreciate it. And thank you for being on the podcast and great discussion. I think we are, I mean, I think we all realize that, but we are at the cusp of something that's going to be crazy, crazy fascinating. So thanks for being here. So where again can folks reach out to
Yeah,
you and get a hold of your company and what have you?
yeah. First of all, Guy, this was super fun. I appreciate your insights as well, and kudos to you to be just talking about this, and great for your audience. I'm on LinkedIn, so John Gargiulo, Garg, and Airpost. Yeah, it's new. We like to think it's one of the useful pieces of AI that can really help, expand the number of ads people are running. So either place.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, John. So Airpost.ai and certainly John Gargiulo on LinkedIn.
Yep.
So for the audience, definitely stay tuned for many other videos in this series on marketing and AI. And if you get a chance, please go to marketingmachine.prorelevant.com and find out more about my upcoming book, the AI and marketing. So, John, thanks again, and we'll hopefully maybe do this again at some point.
That'll be fun. Thanks, Guy.
Thank you, John.